All right, well, thank you for joining us today. We're so glad to have you with us in our second session of creating COVID classrooms, literacy learning in a new hybrid environment. And we're gonna talk about who our presenters are with us today. I'm Dr. Amy Thompson. I am the, program director for the graduate, I had to think a minute, for the Graduate Reading and Dyslexia program at UCA. I teach in that program. So I'm very passionate about dyslexia, intervention, assessment, methods. Working with teachers is one of my favorite things to do. Before I did this, I taught in the Little Rock School District for 14 years. So excited to see so many Little Rock people here today. And that's it about me. How about you, Sherry? You want to tell them about you?
Sure. I'm Sherry Height. I live in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and I am a reading interventionist, and I recently graduated from UCA with my master's. I'm passionate about this because I have two dyslexic sons, so that's the reason that I decided to, that might have been too close, get my master's in this. So I'm very passionate about that, and I truly enjoy helping struggling readers or children with dyslexia break that code and learn. And it's amazing to me to watch their face light up when they get it. So that is about me, but I am in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
And I'm Susan Perry, and this is going to be my second year here at UCA. I used to be a resource room teacher, alternative ed teacher, third grade classroom teacher, let me see, reading specialist. I think I've done mostly everything, pretty much, other than being the principal, and kind of got around. So and I got to work with the Arkansas Department of Ed, which was great. Got to learn lots from them. So that's enough about me. We can move on.
So I do want to share with you a little bit about our graduate programs before we get started. This is a list of all of our graduate programs that are available at UCA. We would be happy to answer any questions that you have about them. But of course, our hearts are near and dear to the reading and dyslexia endorsement because that is where we come from. Although Dr. Perry is also SPED, so we'll be okay with that. But reading tries to steal her most days.
I'm with that, really. I am. Anytime.
Yeah. So we are happy to answer any questions about our program. What you'll hear today will be a tip of the iceberg of what you would learn in our classes. So we hope that we hear from some of you and that there might be some interest out there. We also have a Padlet that we have going, and I am just going to take you there. Maybe. Let's do this.
So while Amy's doing that, I'll just say throughout this presentation, please use the chat if you have questions. If Amy's talking, we check the chat and let her know any questions that come about. Our chat last time was absolutely wonderful. Your questions they were so right on and great, and so please use it. Please feel free to say whatever you want.
Absolutely. So I'm going to put this link for you in the chat box. This is to the Padlet. So feel free to hang on to that, make any notes on it that you would like. At the end of the presentation, when we talk about strategies, we'll ask you to come here and add strategies that you have. If you'll notice, we had a lot from our last session. Our email addresses are in here, and we will also post the link to this presentation in here. So that will be available for you to use. Okay. So a little bit about why we're here. you've probably heard that we're in a pandemic. Probably nobody needs to be reminded, right? So because of that, our classrooms have been online since March of 2020. When we were first put online, the Department of Ed came out and said, that we weren't going to do any new learning. We were going to do review only with our kids. And this is something that I've been researching this summer. And it's been very interesting what I've been hearing, that many interventions that were under an IEP did continue, which is wonderful, but RTI did not necessarily continue. And that is at no fault of the teachers by any means. It appears that it's more of a top-down kind of situation. I'm going to give you the link at the end of this presentation to the research survey if you haven't seen it and would like to participate and give us some information about how you all did interventions, or if you did, when school closed. But that was something that we really honed in on, is that for many, RTI didn't continue. And that is our students that need us the most. So I always click too many times, I'm sorry. So when we think about where this leaves our struggling readers, we think about the Matthew effect, which is derived from the book of Matthew in Matthew 25:29. And researcher Keith Stanovich has come and done more research behind it. And it just basically says, like from the Bible, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. So our struggling readers read less and they get further and further behind. So, that's likely what happened in a lot of homes. Our kids that were reading just fine continued reading and continued growing because it was something either they enjoyed doing, or it came easier for them. But for those that were strugglers, many of them may not have picked up a book since March. And that's a real concern. Those are the kiddos that can afford to lose the instructional time the least. And so I know that's one topic that's been at the forefront of teachers' minds right now, is where are we going to be when school starts? I like what I saw a meme a few weeks ago, and I really liked it. It said, for everybody that's worrying about their kids starting school and starting behind, wait a minute, we've all been in the same place. So no one's going to be ahead or behind of where anyone else was because of the situation, because we're all in the same situation. So we all were in school and had that instruction. So I think that's something important to remember too. And then I think we have to be sure that we think about socioeconomics, because when we think about our kiddos that need the instruction, some of them were able to continue by their parents finding tutors that were willing to work online. But again, those that needed the instruction the most and that are in those lower socioeconomic groups, or who weren't before, but parents lost jobs because of the pandemic, didn't have that afforded to them either, which really has contributed to a problem. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Perry, and she is going to share with you a little bit and pick up from there about RTI and the law.
Okie dokie. Get my screen over here. And hopefully everybody can see my screen. If you can't, let us know. So yeah, I get to do Section 504. I actually love reading about the law. I'm one of those geeks. So if you have a question and I can't answer it, I will be very happy to look it up or talk to one of my friends and get the answer for you. So real briefly, just want to talk to you about, RTI versus Section 504. Now, I concentrated on Arkansas law here. And I know there's different states do different things. And so, chime in if your state does things a little bit differently. But so here in Arkansas, so RTI, if you're looking at RTI, you're looking at a kid, just remember, that does not have a disability. They may be facing some difficulty in some of their classrooms, but they do not have a disability. Section 504, though, those are kids that actually have a disability. Usually we work with the SLD population, and the areas are learning, reading, thinking, and communicating. Everyone, my facial thing is in the midst of things and I can't see my screen. Okay, so what I've done is, what I don't want y'all to do is go to your administrator and say, Dr. Perry said, blah, 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 blah. So what I've done is I have given you every piece of paperwork that I've read to do this presentation. And most of it is all from the federal government, Office of Civil Rights, and the Department of Education. So you take, what I want you to do is you'll be able to access those, read it yourself, and then have a discussion with your administrator. So basically 504, we're just talking about is anti-discrimination. But one thing that I want to talk about is I've had many people from private schools say to me that they don't have to follow Section 504. That's fine, as long as you're not receiving any federal assistance at all. I mean, it can come through sports, it can come through anyway, through your food, anyway. If you get any financial assistance, you have to follow Section 504. Now, if you have any children that are in Section 504, the issue that we're seeing is that it's not really an issue. I'm glad that they get FAPE, a free and appropriate public education. I'm glad, but the issue that we're seeing is that once you go online or you don't work with them anymore, the appropriateness of that education, you're not meeting it. And we are starting to see more and more court cases. And unfortunately, the law is on these parents' side. And so let me show you. So here in Arkansas, specifically, I want to talk to you because this is how we do it in Arkansas. And Sherry, you can tell us what you do in your state. But if you look right here, so after a level 2 dyslexia screening, if it's determined that that child is having characteristics of dyslexia and the team decides that they need accommodations, you need to create a Section 504 plan for them. So I'm not saying that every child that has dyslexia should be on a Section 504 plan in Arkansas, but I'm saying if it's impairing them enough to where they're having symptoms and you're seeing it in the classroom and they need accommodations, they need to have a 504 plan. And once they're on that 504 plan, remember, they get a free and appropriate public education. So Sherry, I know your state doesn't do the 504.
They don't automatically do a 504 for dyslexia. Some students with dyslexia do get a 504, but the majority of our students with dyslexia have an IEP. Because to get intervention with dyslexia in the state of Virginia, you have to have an IEP. You don't receive intervention services in Virginia if you only have a 504. You only get accommodations in Virginia if you have a 504. There's no intervention provided with a 504 for dyslexic students in the state of Virginia. So, and it's not always appropriate. Like you definitely have to fight to get that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we all seem to have to fight for services. But yeah, the other thing is, look at how the 504, if you have a child that has this 504 and they're getting dyslexia services and they're only getting accommodations, look at how that 504 was actually documented. Does it have in there that they will be receiving services from a dyslexia specialist? You know, if that's the case, they need to be receiving services from you. So this is from the U.S. Department of Ed. And one of the things I want to talk to you about is, see where it says, this is what, if the LEA closes its schools or slow to stop the spread of COVID and does not provide any educational services to the general student population. So here in Arkansas, what we're seeing is packets of work sent home. And so the schools, that applies to providing some educational services to those kids. if they're going to send packets home for the regular population, then they have to provide services for SPED, Section 5 for everybody. So do we have to service these kids? If your school district is doing anything with the overall population, then yes, you do. You need to be servicing those kids. Okay, so some of the things that I looked at was what should you be doing? What should you be thinking of when you're looking at these plans and what your school is going to do? Every school is doing something different. So one of the things is they recommended that if you're a 504K coordinator, what accommodations does that child still need? So if you have an accommodation on there, if you're going all virtual and accommodation on there is that they have preferential seating, that's not going to really help you much. So what they're recommending is that the 504 coordinator meet with the parents and the group of knowledgeable individuals and write accommodations that are appropriate to the new learning environment, okay? It's very important because you just never know what this new environment's going to be looking like. The other thing is that, those kiddos that they qualified for a Section 504 plan, but they decided they didn't want any services, you need to go back and check with them and their parents and see if they need services, because they have a record of having the impairment. And you need to double check on that to make sure that, because everything is going wacko now. Okay, so if we go back to the dyslexia law, I just want to talk to you real quickly about the Arkansas. Right here, accessible technology may be afforded to students, including students with disabilities, have an opportunity to have access to high quality educational instruction. So here we're talking about technology. So do your kids need some form of technology assistance in order for them to get services? I don't know, every school, some schools are allowing their kids to have, iPads, or some schools can afford that. So again, this is all a decision that has to be made with the 504 committee and the parents. Let's see. So one of the big things that's coming about now is this idea of compensatory services. And it's kind of interesting because what's happening, actually, I just read something about a school district, and the lawyer was having a discussion with the reporter, and he's actually said, he's a lawyer of a school district, he said, I have told my school district to, if they want to do compensatory services, that's fine, but don't say that it's because they had a loss of skills or regression. Don't say this, because if you agree that this is what happened and this is the reason why they get compensatory services, then it can come back and you can get into a lawsuit later on. So compensatory services, this is from the U.S. Department of Ed. This is what they describe as compensatory services. So what this could be is, so when you're on break, like Thanksgiving break, the parents could ask that because their kids had a loss or a regression, this is what Amy was talking about, and it happened because of COVID, because they weren't meeting with their teachers, that they want services during the breaks, during the Thanksgiving break, Christmas break, to try to get to make up for that skill and regression that occurred while they were at home. So real quickly, what I want you to do, we had an interesting result the last time we did this survey. I want you to take a survey, and I guess it'll pop up here on the screen, but it's going to ask you, did you get to meet with your students, your intervention groups? So if yes, that means that you're able to work with all of your students, okay, however method your school decided to do it. The second one is I was able to work directly with some of my students, and then no, the last one is I wasn't able to work with any of them. Because if you are saying no to this, but yet you are giving services to the general population, just know that that child, if they're showing regression, they could easily ask, the parents could ask for compensatory services, and honestly, they should get them. And I know either people love me or they hate me about now, but I'm just letting you know this is what's coming out. And well, this is looking better, Amy. Don't
It
you?
sure is. I am
Hallelujah.
excited to do this.
I'm so thankful because the last time we did this, what was it, Amy?
It was
Almost-
mostly no.
Yeah, like 43% was it was the high. I think it was the highest, right? It was mostly no, that they did not get to meet with their students at all. So this is looking so much better.
Oh yeah.
So if you are one of them that you have, it's no, you need to then go back and say, okay, did the school completely shut down and not give services to anyone? But if they did, maybe you and I need to have a talk. That's all I can say.
We do have a couple of questions here, Susan, that I think would
Okay.
fit well.
Okay.
So one of our attendees was asking about if they had, so if you continue to provide RTI for dyslexia, do they always have to have a 504? And I said no, because we had talked about that last time.
Mhm.
But then the follow-up comment is very interesting. And she said, we wrestle with this as a staff because our 5th and 6th graders who are being served for dyslexia really need classroom accommodations to meet their full potential. So how would you address that?
So they're not getting their account. Is that what's happening? Are they meeting online, but they're not getting?
They're getting their interventions, but it sounds like they also need some accommodations in their classrooms
Yeah.
in order to meet their full potential. And
Yeah.
so they're trying to decide about
How that's going to work. So, so let me tell you, and let me give you, I'm going to end this poll, or if someone can end the poll.
Yeah.
I am glad of these numbers. That makes me so much, I'm so much
Yes.
happier because of those
Correct.
numbers. So one of the things that, my husband, teaches chemistry, and they went totally online. And so he met with his students daily. And so during the testing, so they would get their additional time. He talked to the 504 coordinator of their school. And so she Zoomed with the students as they were taking their tests so they could have extended time. If you guys have any other examples, I would love to hear them of how the classroom teachers, how that's happening, how they're getting accommodations, how they're servicing those kids with accommodations through the virtual world that we have it now. Usually an extended time is not a problem. If you have other like specific accommodations you're asking, like how could we get them this, type it in the chat and then Amy can tell me. I guess
while we're waiting for that, the other question was, can you define directly? Because they were delivering, I guess, their interventions asynchronously.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so so what they consider providing services for those kids in Section 504, you can do it a couple different ways. You can do it through on telephone, because some kids, you know, here in Arkansas especially, we have issues with bandwidth and, you know, not having, you know, good enough bandwidth to where you can actually even get on. So you can do it through the telephone. And then you can also do it online. But you're supposed to, so if you're sending home work packets though, you should be checking in with your students to make sure that, you know, they're not having any problems with those work packets. But if you're actually providing disability or dyslexia services through intervention, well, then it needs to be whatever intervention program or procedure that you're using, that's what needs to occur. And that can be online or it can be on the phone. I mean, I know it'd be really hard to do it on the phone, but, you know, we're going to have to accommodate. What you don't want to have happen is that you don't provide services. And if you're the dyslexia specialist and you're supposed to be providing services to that child using Orton or whatever method that you're using, and you stop those services and you're not doing anything with them, that's not a good idea. The parent, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Sorry, I thought it was a good place to pop in. What if the parents don't have access to internet or just don't have the children log in?
Right.
Well, I would document that the parents are not, I would definitely have a meeting with the parents, or try to have a meeting with the parents. And these meetings can all be on the phone, or they can, be virtual. But, tell them about that and then document it. That's one thing in SPED that we do very well. Documentation. We know how to keep documentation. So document it the times that the child is not logging in. Go back and ask, is it because of a bandwidth issue? Or, if it's because of a bandwidth issue, then you're going to have to say, well, then we have to do it over the phone.
Okay. Someone else asked for clarification on the packet. So if you send home packets of hard copies of material, you can actually check in with the student either via phone or online to confirm that they, one, don't need help with it, or two, need help with it, and redirect if they do, and assist them with that material.
Yes, and not only you, but the classroom teacher should be doing that too. Because if my husband sent home a packet, which he does, they don't do that. But if he did send home a packet for chemistry, and I'm the 504 person, you do not want me to sit down with chemistry. Very bad idea. So, that's when, if you go back to the other question that someone had of they want those accommodations being done in the classroom, that's when, make sure that when you're doing these accommodations, that the teachers are there and they're on board and they understand that they need to be checking with these kids to make sure that they're not having problems with whatever work that they're sending home.
And is there a best practice on how often you checked in, or is that listed in the 504?
No, that is a decision that the school district's going to have to make. I actually read an article. I can see if I can find it. And if the person who just asked that, I can give you my email. And if you send me an email, I can try to send that to you. But I read an article that said that their one district, that they made sure that those students that had Section 504 plans, that every one of those students, that they were contacted by some teacher, either the interventionist or the classroom teacher. Some teacher checked on them every day to make sure that they did not need additional help. So one of the other things that I want to talk to you about is, because some of our kids are going to be getting sick, if this is from OCR, the Office of Civil Rights, if the kid is out for more than 10 days, so they're not able to attend your virtual, then it's considered a change of placement. And you have to have a 504 meeting to decide what new accommodations need to occur for that child. Okay.
Okay. There was another question that popped up that there's a teacher that teaches in a high poverty school, and a lot of times parents don't have phone service or internet, or just don't get involved. So do you have any recommendations on navigating the barriers as a dyslexia teacher?
So I would love to talk to them, like on the phone or on email, and see what their district is doing for all the kids. Because you have to address this somehow. You have to show that you're providing services. And so I would really like that person to email me, because it will depend a lot on, how's your school district getting like work home to the overall population? Are they getting, is that how they sending it through the mail? Because if they're sending it over internet, and then you've got people that don't have internet services, how are they obtaining those? So there has to be a way that they're providing services for the general ed. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a way of, if they don't have phone services, then it still has to be addressed. So I'd love to address it with that person.
I know in our district, our teachers, at least at the end of the year, because, you know, we went into this continuous learning plan and then an emergency learning plan at the end of our school year, for for a lot of the grade levels, especially K and 1, a lot of our teachers made packets to send home, and then they delivered them and dropped them off at doorsteps. And then would check in periodically. But again, with no phone service, that does make it very difficult. But yeah, I don't know if that's feasible at all, but.
Right. Dr. Perry, I put your email address in the
Thank you.
block or in the chat box, and Shauna commented, I've actually had parents block the school's number, and that's interesting. I've heard that a lot during my research this summer, and it's tough. I mean, you know, right now I think initially everyone was going through so much. We likely had parents that lost jobs. So I think it was overwhelming for everyone. And I think Dr. Perry is right. Documentation is your best friend. You always have to do that.
On the days that, you know, you've called and you were not able to get through, I would document those days, but also you need to document the different times that you called. So if you call every day at 12 o'clock, well, someone can come back at you and say, well, I was out every day at 12 o'clock for lunch or whatever. So you have to try and show that you try to call them a variety of times throughout the day, or, you know, at night, to see if you can get a hold of them. And I think if you do that, and I think you're fine. What my concern is are for those districts that are not doing anything. And unfortunately, we're seeing that. So
I agree, Stephanie. Stephanie just posted a question. How is this going to work with early childhood SPED programs where students require a lot of one-to-one attention? And I think once we get through this review of RTI and we get into what we're going to share with you about how to work with your students online, that some of that will answer your questions and provide you some ideas.
So to move on, just and y'all just interrupt me if you need to, but I know we have to get to everything else. One of the things that they recommend is that if you're a 504 coordinator, that you meet with your groups of teachers and parents, and, you know, also if the child could be in there, and you create a contingency plan for what happens if this occurs. If we go on lockdown again, this is what's going to happen. Because, you know, what's bad is if you have those parents, you know, all of us have parents that do know the law, lucky for them, and we're glad that they do. I wish every parent would know the law. And they're wondering what's going on. And if they can show that nothing happened for like 3 weeks, that's not going to look good on the school. So if you could create a contingency plan, that would be great. This is just in there real quickly. I do know that some of you guys are going to have evaluations and reevaluations for 504 and for IEPs. And so what the government is basically saying that they're going to have, if you're a 504 member, we're going to follow the same procedures that we're asking our IEP teams to do. And you're looking at, you know, if there's no face-to-face, if you're on lockdown, if you're online, then, you know, you don't need to be, you know, asking the kid to come in. But, you know, now Amy and I have taught assessment Amy's in it right now, and I taught last month. We were assessing kids over online, and that was interesting. So we could tell you stories about that, can't we, Amy? So you can.
A couple of students in here right now that could probably speak to that right now.
Yeah, they could. I mean, it's not easy to, I mean, because the kids are all over the place. And so that's a whole nother discussion that I won't have right now because we've got so much to cover. So just real quickly, this whole idea, this is Arkansas, the AMI, what I was talking about, the work packets that were coming home. Some people think that the ADE told everybody that they could not introduce new content, but this is actually what they say. They're just talking about how they urge caution when introducing new content, because they want to make sure you have adequate instructional support. Also meaning that those kids that are needing accommodations are getting that. And so here's when they recommended to just go ahead and, if you can't provide adequate instructional support, then you go ahead and you can work on mastering of those skills. Now for us, for those of us that are interventionists, this is what we do. This is perfect. I mean, this is made for us because we review a ton. So again, this is another reason why we need to be working with our kids. If you're not working with your kiddos, and I'm sorry, but anybody that knows me knows I am really big on Section 504, because I just think, these kids, they need accommodations. And even if they're working on things that they've already been taught, if that's what they need, and the only reason why you're not doing it is because your principal told you not to do it, shame on you. That's all I can say. I'm going to be nice. I'll be really nice. Okay, so I think I already went over this. I think I did. Sorry, I got ahead of myself with some of these. And, okay. Also what I found was, so those of you in Arkansas that have, and I'm sure in many of the other states, your districts, so in Arkansas, they had to provide the ADE with a AMI plan. So all the districts they created this plan, and the ADE has had it for a while. I'm sure they've probably been updated. But in this plan, it tells you all of these areas have been addressed in your AMI plan. So if you want to know maybe what you're supposed to do and nobody really knows, ask your supervisor for your AMI ADE plan, because these are the requirements that the ADE makes you put in your plans. So it should already be done. And I'm going to let Amy talk more about the program.
So again, this is just a tip of the iceberg of things that we talk about. As you can hear, Dr. Perry is very passionate about RTI and 504 and IEPs, and is very knowledgeable. So this is just a little bit of what you would get to start learning and working on through our graduate programs. Again, specifically our reading and dyslexia endorsement. Of course, we'll be happy to talk to you about any of them.
Yes, I'm supposed to put a plug in there. Our department chair told me to make sure I say great things about our special ed program, and we do. We have a great special ed program.
Yes.
I'm putting a plug in there for that as well.
Good, thank you.
If I don't, I'm going to get in trouble. So. I'm joking.
Oh, here we have a library media program. Awesome. Nice. Yes, I love the library media program. Okay, if you'll go to that next slide for me, Susan.
Okay.
So this is where we're going to head towards now. I was an elementary teacher, again, 14 years. So the elementary cheesiness might still be in me. So we are going to think of this as hybrid literacy grouping stomps out reading difficulties. And we're going to remember that word stomps. So we're going to focus on structure, time and technology, ongoing assessment, materials, plan, and strategies. So Dr. Perry is going to start us out with structure, and I'll be back when we talk about time.
Okay, so any of you that are a dyslexia interventionist, I'm sure you are familiar with the Reading League. Well, the Reading League, I absolutely love this organization. They have a journal out, and this this last journal that they put out is all about the simple view of reading. And they actually have articles in there from Hoover and Tunmer. And so great information. So this is what I want to talk about really briefly. We should still be working in Arkansas with the simple view of reading. I like using this picture right here because it kind of looks at it from a variety of angles. You know, here we still have our word reading, we still have the listening comprehension, reading comprehension, fluency. But what they talk about in one of the articles is what Kim has done is she has looked at all the underlying skills and how all these underlying skills help create the ability to have a good listening comprehension and to be able to read words accurately and fluently. So, you know, we're still, when you're doing your intervention, we're still doing all of these areas. If it's written in the 504 that they're supposed to be receiving intervention services from a dyslexia specialist, and it says they're supposed to be using the program, this is what you should still be doing with them, okay? And also, just, I'm not going to read this to you, but I just want you to know the article that they talk about that Hoover and Tunmer wrote that's in this edition, they talk about how the simple view of reading, how it never really was meant to be considered truly simple, because they even say that it's a very complex system. And so just again, to remind you, keep on doing what you were doing in the classroom. It may look a little bit different, but you still should be following the same program and the same goals and objectives. And this, I believe, Sherry, you looked at this. This is a really good link for small groups, and it just talks about how to create a structured learning environment. Do you want to add anything?
It talks about all of the features on Zoom and how to use breakout rooms and do the flexible grouping through the breakout rooms, and even provide one-on-one intervention or listening into one-on-one students in a small group. It really is a great video on how to do small group and use the breakout rooms for one-on-one.
I think you said it was an hour. Is that correct?
It is about an hour.
Okay. Okay, so I'm done. I'm gonna let it, who is,
Me.
I think Sherry's taking over.
Amy, it's
Sorry,
time.
Amy.
It's okay.
Yep.
Yep. And there was a question before I get started here about doing dyslexia interventions, and since many parents are not accessible live until late evenings, will recorded lessons be okay for dyslexia intervention? I think that that's okay for the direct instruction part, but there are many pieces of that. I mean, like they're going to have the practice, and they need to have that immediate corrective feedback practice. So I think the direct instruction part could definitely be recorded, but there's going to have to be some point that you interact with the child in order to ensure they're getting it, and to provide that corrective feedback.
Can I talk about that for a second? So
Sure.
In Virginia, we have an early reading intervention initiative, and we use PALS. It's phonological awareness literacy screening to screen students that qualify for intervention. And we provide small group reading intervention, and that all stopped when COVID happened. And when we entered our emergency learning plan, we were then told that we could provide recorded, for lack of a better way, intervention. But then you're still not interacting with your students that need, again, that direct feedback. So one of the things that at my school I chose to do to try to get some of that direct feedback for the students, I used Flipgrid. So that was one of the ways that I chose to have a little bit of interaction with the kids, because I wasn't able to do Zoom. We were told we just couldn't do that. Again, you don't get participation for all of our students. So that is an option. It's something to think about if that's the way that you have to do it for some of your kids. There are great resources out there where your students can record themselves and you can provide feedback if that is the only way that you can do that. So that's just a little tidbit.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Okay, so we're thinking about STOMPs. So we talked about structure, and now we're going to talk about time and technology. So these are kind of the keys that we think are to working with students successfully online. So if you think about time-wise, I know one thing when I was in the classroom that was always so challenging is, you know, I have this group of kids that I need to work with. What are all these other kids going to do? And there's always going to be somebody in your room that's going to cut up or that you really need to keep an eye on. So sometimes it's difficult to facilitate those groups. Online, you have less of a problem with that because you're scheduling these one group at a time. So you can use your waiting room feature if you're scheduling them back to back and students get there early and you're using Zoom and they can hang out in the waiting room just like many of you did today until you're ready to let them in. Or you can stagger further apart how you schedule those. But the ability to schedule and focus on your group is really, I think, going to be a positive that could come out of this. Being able to truly differentiate and work with these kids in small groups and just focus on that group. With scheduling, you can use things like GroupMe or a Google Doc or Remind 101 is an app. We always encourage the use of timers for you and for your students, whether you're talking about for each element of the lesson that you're working through or just how long you're giving them to do on an independent task. Amazon has this timer here that I have a picture here for you. It's called the Time Timer. And I was introduced to that when I was teaching 4th grade by an occupational therapist. And it is a great timer because you can get it without numbers. And then it's just the visual timer. So you just see the red part move. So the kids don't hear this constant clicking that they're focused on, or they're not so focused on the numbers. They could just see that the red's going away. It's a little less intimidating. The really awesome thing is Apple and Android both have an app for this, and it is a great app, and you can use it with numbers and without numbers. And during COVID right now, it's free. So it's definitely a timer that I suggest that you go and check out. When you're thinking about timers and using them, you want to think about, is this something that I need for each component of my lesson plan? So if I'm doing an intervention lesson, like a snapshot of one here, your intervention lessons are about 45 minutes. So you need to be sure that you break that time down so that you don't spend all of your time on phonemic awareness or a warm-up or drilling sounds, and that you don't get caught up in a fun game that is working on a review of some skill, and you don't stay too much time there. So using those timers is very helpful there. Tim Shanahan also talks a lot about small groups. I really like his philosophy. He talks about that we should use small groups as needed. So not that we plan our day around, right now, this block of time I'm teaching whole group, this block of time I'm teaching small group, this block of time I'm teaching one-on-one. So not that I plan my day around that, but that I plan around my content and my students. So if I'm teaching something that lends itself to be taught whole group, then I teach it whole group. And if there's some kids that don't understand, then I pull them back and do some reteaching. If I'm teaching a more difficult concept like phonemic awareness, where they really need to be able to look at my mouth and tongue and lip placement, then that is best done in a small group or individual. So when we think about our regular instructional strategies, just using our grouping wisely. And remember that some of those lessons can be as short as 10 or 15 minutes, and they should be flexible. So our grouping should be based on skills or areas that our students need help in or remediating. So once they get that skill, then the groups may shuffle. You may have kids stay because they need some more work, but one of your kids may have gotten it and be ready to move on to another group. However, small groups are a must for RTI. Those kids have to have their small group time. That's what RTI is about. And so it does not become as optional when you're talking about RTI. When we think about technology, you want to think about what your kids have access to, whether they're computers, Chromebooks, iPads, and what it is you're asking them to do. I know the three of us have talked about just different devices. For me, I love an iPad, but if I don't have a keyboard, I would hate to do anything that required me to do any kind of response. So if I was advising a parent or had money with the school through care funds to be able to get devices, I would lean towards probably Chromebooks or computers, because you could also use them for written response. I think we also have to think about internet. Now, I did just see that the governor has gotten the legislator to approve some funds to help pay for internet. I think I saw for like up to 24 months, which is good.
Wow.
Yeah, he fought for that. But we also have to think about, even if we get all of our kids internet, what will their speed be like? I have friends in higher ed that have internet, but I can't even have a Zoom call with them because the bandwidth is not so great and their speed is so slow. And the wiring that they have out in their area is not strong enough. So those are the things that we need to think about when we're planning our lessons, so that we keep in mind that those kids that have slower internet speeds, to not have our online lessons be so graphic intensive, because things like that take up a lot of bandwidth. And so we really have to scale back and be really basic in what we use. Webcams are important. And then especially when you're working with phonemic awareness, a headset is a must. You really have to have that for both you and your student, so that you're sure that through your mic, you're able to clearly enunciate to them, and then you're able to hear what they say, because some of those sounds sound so close, like and and the mouth is not that different. And so it's hard to differentiate unless you really, I've done a lot of work with this summer. Have those headsets is so important. And then we have to think about the student setting. So each of our students, do they have a quiet place that they're working? Will they be off in their room? Will there be someone with them? Will they be in the middle of the kitchen while everyone's running around and it's kind of loud and crazy? So we have to really think about and plan for that too when we plan for our time and technology. Okay, so we've got structure, time and technology, and now we need to talk about ongoing assessment. So when we think about assessment, there's 4 kinds of assessment. We have screening, progress monitoring, diagnostic, and outcomes assessment. Your outcomes assessment is typically like your ACT Aspire, and we're not going to have that data this year. Your diagnostic assessment is the ones that your psych examiners, your speech language pathologists, and your dyslexia specialists can give. Now, this is something that the Department of Ed has really wanted higher ed institutions that have the dyslexia endorsement to emphasize, because many schools need someone there that can administer and interpret those level 2 assessments in dyslexia. And that is what our endorsement prepares you to do. You have one class that is just on assessment. And so when you get your dyslexia endorsement after you've had our class, and that class has been in there, then that shows that you are eligible to be, and that you've been trained to be able to administer and interpret those assessments. And so that's something important to remember about when you're thinking about programs. Screening is what we're doing, should be going on at the beginning of the year. So remember, the law tells us everyone in K2 is screened, and then anyone 3rd grade and up that is new to the district or is someone that we think needs to be screened. So the typical trio that that the State Department lays out is using DIBELS or Acadience, the Arkansas RAN, and a spelling assessment such as the DSA. That way you've covered encoding, decoding, and rapid naming. So then we come to progress monitoring, and that is our important part to remember, to work on, and to be sure that we do, especially when we're working in small groups. So those students that we're working with, it's important that we progress monitor them every 2 to 3 weeks. This should be short and only on what you're teaching. So if you are working on rhyme generation with them, you would not have to give them an entire phonemic awareness assessment, which includes isolation, blending, segmentation, as a progress monitoring. They just have to have the generating part. And then you see if they have mastered it and they're ready to move on. And then use this information. This information should be used to guide your flexible grouping, to guide your instruction, and for progression through the tiers. So are you using certain methods? Are they working? If they're not working, have you tried something else? Have you tried something else and that's not working? Then it's time to progress on up to tier 3. Okay, so we are now going to talk about what assessments in particular that you can do online. Ladies, do you think we should do the breakout room or
How's our
back at the end?
It's just now.
It's
2.
2.
I had to do the time change. It's just now 2.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we'll be good. All right, so we're going to put you in breakout rooms, and these will be your questions that you're focusing on when you're in your group. I want you to talk about what progress monitoring assessments you currently use, and talk about how do you use those results. Can you administer those online? Do students need materials other than what is online? How are students going to get those materials? And then how far ahead can you plan these assessments? And then I want you to talk about the positives and the negatives that you see about online progress monitoring and assessment just in general. Okay, so let me get us, there we go. Breakouts, we have 61.
62.
So if you had a law question, what I've been doing is trying to chat with you privately. So if you asked a specific question, you might want to check the chat room to see if I responded.
Okay, I'm going to divide you up into 8 rooms. That'll be about 7 or 8 people per room. If you need help, be sure and hit that help button and we'll be available to pop in. We will be jumping around just to kind of hear some of the things that you're talking about. And then we'll bring everybody back in about 10 minutes and share some of the ideas that you have. And then we'll give you some ideas for assessments moving forward, and then find out about the rest of STOMPs. Okay, so they are open. You should have gotten an invite. Just click join room.
I don't know what to tell those people other than
And
At least we're in it together.
yeah,
yes, you are so right.
Hey, Kelly, I'm not sure. Kelly and Janine, I got kicked out of my room, so sorry. I know we were in the middle of conversation.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean.
It's okay. No, it's okay. It is okay. It's like all of a sudden, whoop, I'm gone. It's fine. Breakout box, it's fine. Kelly was saying something and then it was gone.
And it wasn't earth shattering. I was just saying how that information about students having headsets is really valuable information that I had not thought through, even though I'm working with a girl this summer on phonemic awareness. And if she had a headset, it would be a game changer. So that really is an important takeaway, I think.
Yes, and that
And
was
sometimes it's the small things that you're like, oh.
I had not thought about it at all until I was. I've been doing some assessments this summer, and I was doing the CTOP, and that's all fun.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, I have no idea because she didn't open her mouth very wide. But we got those headsets on, and it was awesome. The little things.
Mm-hmm.
I've yet to use the breakout rooms. Is there a way to show us how to do that?
Yes, it's in that video that I posted. The video that's back in the, yes, in the, yes, it is. It's in the video. It's in the very first video link.
I should watch that.
It does show you. I had to think for a second. I was like, yes, we have a tutorial. Yep.
Posting some free PD sites for people just so they have them.
Okay, so why don't I'm going to go through and talk about some phonemic awareness assessments. And so while I'm doing that, why don't you type in the chat box what kind of phonemic awareness assessments that you currently use for progress monitoring, and then I'm going to share some. So we have to remember that phonemic awareness is all oral, so we should not have any print. If you have, once you get those headsets, those headphones, it will be one of the easiest assessments to give online because your students don't need anything. You just ask them questions and they respond. And so I have linked here for you 3 of the more common assessments, one of them being my favorite, which I always have to share. But I love the PAST, and that one's David Kilpatrick's, that goes along with his 1-minute routines, and those are fantastic. I love the PASS. It's very easy. My absolute favorite, and one that I am really advocating for in this day and time, is the Pro-PA.
Okay.
Downfalls are that it's for iPad only, but the only person that needs it is the teacher. So if the teacher has an iPad, then you're good to go. And it's an expensive app. And I say expensive because it's expensive than what I would usually pay for an app. But it's about $35. But that is for you to assess as many kids as you want or need to for as long as you want or need to. There's no subscription fee. There's no set limit. The thing I love about the Pro-PA, and this is just a link to their website, I'll show you. But the thing that I love about this is you don't have to score it. It does all of the scoring for you. This is one of the reports that you get, just a quick snapshot in graph form so that you can see how your students are doing. And I don't know if it shows on here. I think I pulled one out of my Google Drive last time. It runs a beautiful report that looks like this. So it tells at the beginning, you put in the student's age, but it tells exactly what you're assessing. And then it goes through each area and then calculates the percentage, and then lets you know if they're emerging not achieved, or achieved. So that's something that's really easy to print or email to parents so they can quickly see and easily understand areas that their kiddo is struggling in. And I say that I advocate for this one because with all of the changes, I think we have to find every time suck we can get rid of, for lack of a better word, that we can. And so if we can find something that it grades it for us, even better. If it generates me a report, sold. The other thing that I like about it is that if the child misses 2 or 3 in a row, it automatically kicks to the next assessment. So it's not going to make you administer all 6 or 10 items. And so I like that it does that. So we don't have to get them to the frustration point.
And we have a question about that because I don't remember having used it in a while. How long does it take to give the Pro PA? Does it tell you in that?
The first time you give it is probably going to take you about 20 minutes. After you get more proficient with it, after you give it a few times, it shouldn't take you more than about 10.
That's it.
So when we think about phonemic awareness, some suggestions are with Zoom, you can record the assessment so that you can go back later and hone in more on the scoring and worry more about the administration when you're with your student. Using that headsets and with microphones, turning that volume way up, sitting really close to your camera. So that you really over enunciate, because it's all about the mouth and the shape of the mouth. And then don't forget about pictures. These don't have to be formal assessments for progress monitoring. It can be something you create. So this is something that I just did with Google Images. Do these rhyme? Dog, log. And they can give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down or however it is that you want them to respond. What sound do these start with? Balloon, basket, baby. And they should be able to tell you the initial sound. Then you can get the kids involved and you can send them out to Google Images. Now you go find a picture of something that starts with a B sound or something that rhymes with dog, and then come back and paste it here. Or they could run around their house and find something and hold it up for you. So just some other ways that you can quickly progress monitor that don't have to be so formal. Okay, what about phonics? What all are you using in phonics when you progress monitor? Sorry, I have 3 Yorkies and it looks like it's about to be a Yorkie cage match. They're fighting over something. Okay, so hopefully you'll put those in the box and I'll share with you some, and Sherry, if you'll tell me if anything pops up. But a great phonics is using Dibbles, the nonsense word fluency. Acadience is definitely the one that you want to veer yourself towards rather than Dibbles 8. So if you don't know the whole big saga, Dibbles people and Acadience people got in a big argument and decided we don't want to work together anymore. So the Dibbles people is the university that held the data. The Acadience people are the people that actually created the assessment. This is why Acadience is so much better, because they created the assessment, so they understand their scoring. The Dibbles people right now, there was a huge problem this last year in schools that adopted Dibbles 8, where there were whole classes of kids that were coming up as not on benchmark, and it's because the scoring was not set right. So if you have any voice in that, Acadience is definitely the better choice. There are also these diagnostic decoding surveys, and these are created by Really Great Reading, and you can download these for free following that website, but you can just administer sections of those if you wanted to use them. So it's always really helpful to remember that in phonics, you're having them read something. real words and nonsense words. So sharing your screen is really important so that you've got a copy and they've got a copy. Recording it is always good so that you can go back if you need to. And then remember, they don't have to be formal. They can be something that you create. Your caution that I want to give you is in using sites like Teachers Pay Teachers and some of those other sites. I love them, and there are some great things on them, but there are also some not great things on them. So you really have to look and make sure that you're assessing what it is that you want to assess. So don't just print off a syllable division activity and give it to your kids, and maybe you've only done open and closed syllables and it has final stable syllable on it. Or if you've only worked with 1 syllable words and it's got 4 syllable words. So you really want to be cautious. Does it have irregular words on there? Have you talked to your kids about what you do with irregular words? So be very cautious of your sources. Fluency assessments. What kind of fluency assessments are you all using? You might type those in the chat box. And when I think about fluency assessments, again, I go back to Dibble's Acadience, but it can even be fluency phrases or decodable readers. Again, sharing your screen, recording is, I think, really important here so that you can go back and make sure that you don't miss anything. And I think that we also have to remember rubrics. So fluency is not just accuracy and speed, but it's also prosody, phrasing, intonation. So I just pasted one here as an example of a rubric, but there are some great ones out there. These are some things that I teach in my Multisensory 2 class, and we actually look at some fluency rubrics, and you can find out a lot about your kids' reading by doing this. Okay, and comprehension. What are you all using for comprehension? Might throw some out there in the chat box. And I'll just say that passages and having kids retell is the best way to assess comprehension. Ask them questions. So you can just share your screen, put up the piece that you want them to read, have a piece in front of you, record it, and remember, it doesn't have to be formal. I always think that it's important to have your kids read aloud and assess their comprehension, and to read silently and assess their comprehension. Okay, so we have STOMPs. We've done structure, time and technology, ongoing assessment. The 4th one is materials. So when you think about materials, again, don't forget, check your resources. You need to be sure it's a reliable source. You need to be sure that it's working. So just because it worked a week ago doesn't mean it's going to work today. See if you need to download anything, or if you have to ask the parents to download anything, and make sure the materials are going to achieve your objective. I love technology. I do not love technology for technology's sake. So it's really important to remember that use the technology that's there, but don't throw in all the extra fluff because it's going to be fun, or you just want to try this. Okay, be sure it matches with what you're doing. And there's going to be more about this shared in the strategy section when Sherry talks. But I did want to provide you a list of links here. This is on our UCA website. It is a list that we started creating in March. I had teachers contacting me saying, help, we're having to do AMI and I have no idea what to do. So I just started curating a list of resources, and people started sending me ideas. My current students and my alumni sent in some ideas because we do a digital tools assignment. So this is something that they've had to research. And so I have this broken down by every area here for you. Here's just a ton of places you can get free texts. But there's also classroom tools, there's video lessons, groups that you can join, free webinars for teachers, and some professional readings. this Keys to Literacy, Dr. Perry turned me on to. So that is, I'm loving that. That's fantastic. So I'm adding to this all the time, but just know that it's there for you if that's a resource that you would like to use. This is one that my soon-to-be daughter-in-law in about a week created, this Bitmoji classroom craze.
And she does do PD on it, right?
She did. She's done
nice.
a PD on it. So if you are interested in a PD on it, you can email me and I'll send it on to her, because she's working on scheduling some more, because it went really well. And I can't work all this like she can. I promise I'm not a dinosaur, but I have not played with Bitmoji Classroom yet. But what I do love that she showed me is they do Wilson. And so she has a foundations room. And so they have a slide for trick words and word of the day. And then each of the posters are scanned in. And then I swear she had this, okay, she can make this work. I cannot. She clicks, I was in her presentation the other day. She clicked and she drugged and it worked. I may have to be in like presenter mode or something.
You have to be in edit, I think. It's okay. I know. I found that out the other day. You have to be in edit. Because look, you're in view only. You have to be in edit.
Yeah.
I found that out. I'm
Thank you. Okay.
yeah.
So
No, anyway.
less not smart. Thank you. So anyway, this is really cool. So that's another resource that I put up for you. This is a Padlet that Sherry has been working on. I love this. Sound walls are so important, and she's transforming using Padlet to a digital sound wall. I love it. I was loving how she's even adding the audio.
I wish you could do both, the picture and the audio, but it won't let you do both.
And now there's got to be a way to make it.
I know.
So that, I love that. That link is available for you. This Toy Theater is a great website that has Elkonin boxes and activities when you're working with putting letters in order. Newsella is a great site when you're working on current events and building background knowledge. If you haven't read The Knowledge Gap by Natalie Wexler, you need to add that to your list. Talks about how our kids could be reading much more difficult texts if we just built their background knowledge and taught topically. It's very interesting. And then this is my new favorite site. I think Sherry found this.
So which one is this? Oh yeah, I love this one.
I'm loving this.
I love it when I tutor, because then we can do a game to reinforce whatever skill has been taught. So that's what I love about this one. Like, I've not created my own. I find what I need.
So, you just have this and you drag them. I mean, I just love that. And
There's
then,
whack-a-mole. I mean, there's all kinds of fun stuff. Yeah.
I haven't played in it long enough to find whack-a-mole. I got to go look for that. I love it.
There's fun stuff. Yeah.
So there's tons of stuff in there. You could just go spend a good long while in there.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so we've done structure, time and technology, ongoing assessment, materials. We have 2 left, plan and strategies. And I'm going to turn it over to Sherry.
Okay, let me share my screen. All right. Oh, wait, hold on. Can you see? Can you see?
Now we can.
Okay, I was about to say, I don't think I have it in the right spot. Okay, so we are going to actually practice using some responses before we get started on our plan. So I would like to know who has actually already used an online format for either whole class or small group instruction. You can either raise your hand like this, or you can use the reactions at the bottom in Zoom. And I think that's more fun for your students. So if you find the reactions at the bottom of your screen, this kind of gets your students interacting with you in a different way besides just raising their hand. Okay. So a few of you have. So I can't see everybody's response. Okay. Then my next question for you, give me a thumbs up if you're comfortable using the format that or platform that you've previously used. And you can put in the chat box what you've used. I wish there was a way for me to see everybody. Okay. So when we talk about a plan, or when I even thought about a plan, I really thought about 3 questions when I was planning. I thought about what online format, what materials my students need, and we've talked about materials before, but I think this goes here also, and then lesson plan template. So a plan is not only your lesson plan template. So when you talk about moving into an online format, of course, we want to make it as seamless as doing face-to-face, but we need to know what format is going to work best for me. Not every district allows you to choose. Some districts want you to pick to use their format. Some of them do Google Meet, Zoom, and I've even heard some districts are using WebEx. I don't know very much about that one. So if you don't have a choice, of course, you have to get very comfortable with what your district wants you to use. But if you have a choice, decide which one you are much more comfortable using and learn as much as you can about that and all of the features. There are lots of features that go with both Zoom and Google Meet. Google Meet, you have to download all of the extra extensions, I believe, to get all of the features. But if there's any other formats that you're more comfortable with, you might look and see what those are, but I don't know of any others besides those 3 main ones. So materials, do my students need hard copies of materials? Do they need an actual paper copy of the story that I want them to read? Is that something that I need to run off? Do I need to send that via email and have the parents print it? Do they have a printer? Like all of these things you need to kind of plan and think through before you plan your lesson. Can I share it on my screen? Can I share it for all 5 of my students? Do I need to share it and do breakout rooms? What does that look like? Do they need a whiteboard? Do I expect them to write? Do they need paper? Like all of these things you need to plan for, and I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. It's just, I want you to start thinking about how am I going to plan for this small group and all of the pieces that are needed, and take it one step at a time and kind of start at the top of your lesson plan. And if you're doing a structured literacy or Orton Gillingham lesson, start at the top. What do you need for phonemic awareness? And kind of break it down. What do I need for phonemic awareness? Have I done my assessments, and do I know who's in this small group and what they might need? And one step at a time. And then your lesson plan. So that's where you get to the lesson plan. What times do you need? And then if it is an RTI group, you're going to need to make notations and track progress. Did your student attend today? Did they attend for the whole time? Right, the attendance is very important for those RTI groups. And then you have to track progress. So this is another sample of a digital lesson. On this one, times are not noted on this lesson plan, but the apps and all of the digital resources that the teacher needs to do this lesson are all listed on here, which I think is very important. So you're not trying to find what you need. You have everything already pre-planned, pre-listed for each of the skills. So that's kind of an overview of your planning. Were there any questions for that one? Okay, so now we're moving on into our strategies. So when I went through the strategies, I really thought that in order to accomplish all of my strategies, I really had 2 questions in mind. How do I accomplish the goal for online for part of my lesson? And how do I keep my students engaged? So as we go through all of the strategies, it's really broken down into the 2 questions. So I have my goal, and how do I keep my students engaged? So my goal is differentiation and flexible grouping, and it's all based on the assessment data that I did beforehand. Most of it's going to be done one-on-one. I don't really know how you can do it in a small group. And to group them together based on need. Do these students only need phonemic awareness? Do I group them together just for phonemic awareness for 10 or 15 minutes, like Dr. Thompson was talking about before? Can I meet their need in that amount of time? And how am I going to keep them engaged via Zoom or Google Meet? So, and the next goal is behavior management, which I know is probably something that you're all definitely thinking about, right? How am I going to keep my small group engaged, all of them? There is a video over here, wish we had time for you to watch it, but it will be linked for you in the presentation later on how to manage that and what you can do. There's even digital stickers down here. And I started using these with a little girl that I'm tutoring this summer because she does need behavior management. And what we've done in the past is check marks on a whiteboard, and I tried to do those digital, like with me doing them, and she just didn't work for her. I incorporated the digital stickers for her recently, night and day. Just the fact that she could get a sticker on the checklist at the beginning of, like, every single time we completed a piece of the lesson, it was amazing. So you want to plan and organize your lesson. You want to begin with the checklist. There's a lot of kids that need that visual component of, you're going to do phonemic awareness, you're going to do a visual drill, you're going to do an auditory drill. They need to know exactly what's coming, because I would assume every single time you're going to meet with them, it's going to be the same. And that way, that meets their social emotional needs, and they understand that they're going to get a sticker. And you could even reward them at the end with a fun video, a game, something if they get all of their stickers. Let me see if I can get the stickers open, because I think these, I don't know if I can the way that, because I have this downloaded on my laptop, I can't. But they are quite amazing. They're just basically clip art, but they work like a dream.
Maybe you could use them during faculty meetings too.
You can use them lots of ways. But I was shocked. I wish I could take credit for these, but I did not make them myself. So our next goal would be our phonemic awareness. And there's so many ways that you can do this. Of course, Kilpatrick's 1-minute drills are amazing online, but you could make your own. You could do a scavenger hunt, a board game that you create in Google Slides or Jamboard. There's a couple of links for Toy Theater and a game over here that is, it's like a game board. And I'm sorry, my links aren't working. But you can also create Elkonin boxes. So if we were to say the word SAT and your student needs help with all of those sounds, SAT. And that's just in a Google slide. You just have to let them have edit access so they can move them around. And if you wanted them to manipulate it, so change SAT to BAT. And then another strategy for phonemic awareness is I Spy. I think this one's fun because it's summer vacation. Find all of the pictures that begin with K. Right? And then they can start naming all of them. Find all of the pictures that begin with S, or everything that begins with P. There's a lot of them. So instead of them circling them, they can just start either typing them in the chat box or raising their hand and telling you. There's so many different ways to do phonemic awareness besides just Kilpatrick or Heggerty, to change it up just a little bit. So our next goal would be your visual and blending drills. to get your letter sound correspondence. You can do handheld cards, which I did for a very long time. But you can also create a Google slide where you have your cards in them. It's very easy to do. A text box, make your card at the bottom, your letter at the bottom, and you can even do blending drills that way. And there is a video to show you how to do that. Okay. Our next strategy is for auditory drill. Again, your student is probably going to need a whiteboard or piece of paper. You have a whiteboard in Zoom. There, I believe, is now a whiteboard feature in Google Meet, but you do have to download an extension for that. Your whiteboard, when you go to share your screen, you have a choice to share a whiteboard, and you just click on the whiteboard. Okay. Your student can type in it. The one caveat that I do have for that is make sure their autocorrect is turned off. On an iPad, they can write with their finger. I think on some Chromebooks, they can write with their finger too, but I don't know if all of them have that feature. But yeah, if autocorrect, you want turned off. So you're seeing what they're actually spelling. But a strategy to use for this would be simultaneous oral spelling. So you say the word. So if I said slip, the student would repeat the word slip and then segment it. Slip. They would then spell it S-L-I-P as they write it. And then they check what they wrote to make sure they wrote S-L-I-P. And you can do the same thing for dictation. You say the word as they look at you, because a lot of times kids need to make sure that you're saying either and not, right? And then the student repeats the word, they write it, they read it back to you. So you have SOS, so simultaneous oral spelling and dictation. And then I have a picture of actually when I've used this tutoring. So this is just a piece of paper that she wrote on instead of a whiteboard. That day she didn't have her whiteboard for whatever reason. So this was SOS. And then the other one was dictation. So we were reviewing the two sounds of S and the inflectional ending ES. So the inflectional ending for S and ES. So I'd given her the word hops. She was typing in that day. I had to make her turn off her, her autocorrect. That was the day I realized that autocorrect was there. So we go back and forth when I tutor, whether we do a piece of paper, a whiteboard at home, or a whiteboard that I share, just to kind of change it up a little bit. The next strategy is fluency. I share my reading passage on Zoom. And for fluency, I use scooping and the neurological impress method because my student has earphones. And this was done one-on-one. In small groups, I would do breakout rooms. So you're popping in to listen to your students read. And if they need help with fluency, I would suggest the scooping so they know to phrase words together. And again, if they don't know what that is, you're going to have to take the time to explicitly teach them. And you actually have at the top of Zoom, you have an annotate little pen, and that's what I use to write. And my student also has the same thing. She can write on the screen. This was me that day. She wasn't feeling like writing, so this was me. And then she would read back through everything that's scooped together, and then we will read together. So as you do the neurological impress method, the first time she reads by herself, she scoops, she reads again, and then we read together. And then she reads it one more time. So, and again, if they prefer a hard copy, you can certainly make sure that the parent has the ability to print it or that you've provided that. So Flipgrid, somebody mentioned earlier in our chat box that they have their students read their reading passages to check fluency and record it, which I think is a great idea. that you could do that. And then Seesaw has features where you can also do that too. Check time. Okay, so and other strategies for vocabulary, this is an answer garden where you have, or word concept, where you do the definition, synonyms, use the word in a sentence, and then you can even give antonyms. I've also seen it where students draw a picture at the bottom, which I think is a great way for students to use words in their own, to define words in their own words. Sorry, that was wordy. But if they draw a picture, especially with a lot of our struggling students, it helps them visualize what these words mean, right? So, but for vocabulary, you always want to engage that background knowledge, it helps them with deeper understanding. And morphology is a great way to do this. I recently started using morphology. I'm tutoring an older student also, and building that vocabulary is huge, especially for older students. He's a rising 8th grader and he desperately needs that. So morphology is an amazing way to help with that. Manipulating the prefix and suffix of words is a great way to do that. So, and comprehension. So we use graphic organizers a lot for students to understand what they've read. Simply asking questions does the same thing, but if they're struggling to even remember the story, graphic organizer will help them. Sometimes you do need to provide scaffolding, especially if they have a working memory issue and don't remember the whole story. You may need to fill out, have them fill out the beginning and then scaffold them through the middle and the end, or even the settings. You may have to scaffold them through some of this until they can do it all on their own. But I still think this can be done online. It just takes a little bit of adjustment. But Flipgrid, again, is one way that your student can retell. This is a great little graphic organizer for that. So what is the story about? What happened first, then first, next, then, and last. So it kind of guides them through what to tell you on Flipgrid. Okay. So story maps, exit tickets, you can use Padlet for an exit ticket. They can even do their own little comment on a Padlet or a Jamboard. They can do a post-it on Jamboard to tell you, answer a question. So are there any questions about, I feel like that's a whole lot. Okay, so you can definitely go to Padlet and post any strategies that you have that you've used in the classroom that you think would be beneficial in
transitioning
to the online classroom.
I have posted that link in
Oh, good.
our box. So if you all will take a minute to go and do that. And I'm gonna pop in and wrap us up here. So my cheesy plug, don't forget your name, your name stomps out regression and literacy, and you're going to do that through doing your small groups, structure, time and technology, ongoing assessment, materials, plans, and strategies. If you have questions for us, we'll be around here for just a little bit. I did put this link in the chat box also. This is the research study that I was mentioning at the beginning of the webinar. If you haven't seen that floating around before or have not participated, we would love to get your voice in there. We're getting ready to close that survey pretty soon and start analyzing some data, but I would love to hear what you all have to say also. So I've put that link in the chat box. And then please don't forget that you can contact any of us if you're interested in our graduate programs at UCA. Sherry doesn't work with us, but we have, we're making her work for free.
I'm happy to do it.
I told her she is a recent graduate, and I said she's so good that she's going to have to change her phone number if she wants to get rid of me. So she can answer your questions too. But I would be happy to answer questions about any program. Definitely the reading and dyslexia, of course, but any of the others, we would be happy to also.